the last few days off to spend time with family over the holidays. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas, and I'm back. And it's good to be back. I know we're wrapping up what for some I'd say would think is a pretty disappointing 2025 in the world of crypto. And like everybody else, I was hoping we would have seen more fireworks. But you may recall that it was late 2024, or it may have been the very beginning of 2025, where I was sharing perspectives warning that you could perhaps not see this cycle peak until 2026 for reasons that I've been highlighting consistently, in particular over the last several months or so. It's the Raoul Pal thesis of global macro investor. He's also the founder of Real Vision. And there is no other macro thesis I've seen that makes even a little bit of sense. There's nothing cohesive. In fact, there isn't even a cohesive, a total macro thesis in opposition to this. There are random ideas here and there that they don't congeal. They don't come together. And I'm not seeing anybody else putting these random thoughts together because they frankly wouldn't congeal. Which does mean that if he's right, the best is yet ahead. It just means we had to wait a little bit longer. And so, folks, when it comes to 2026 and XRP in 2026, read between the lines, my friends. Like the best is yet ahead, and nobody can literally know exactly what's going to happen for sure. But it does, for many good reasons, make sense to be an optimist going into 2026. This thing's going to rip to the upside at some point in the future, regardless. I'm just optimistic that this theory and the Raoul Pal theory, but also just the idea that Bitcoin, XRP, pick your coin. These are macro assets. And so, of course, they're beholden to macro conditions. And that's just fine by me. Now, if you're talking in the very short term, I will warn you that I've been seeing analysts continue to cite the very real possibility that you could see lower XRP prices in the short term. And many analysts I follow have been warning this for maybe the last, 6-7 weeks. And it's enough of them that it's caught my attention. And I've been warning this for quite a while. And price has been trending down, not just for XRP, but for the broader asset class. I'm just warning you, maybe we're at the bottom, fine, but we actually might not be, in which case, fine, markets find bottoms, we'll still rip to the upside. I just want to let you know so you can get your feels in order in case we get a hit. That's all I'm saying. All right. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it's 2:32 p.m. Central Time, Saturday, December 27th, 2025. XRP is $1.85. Bitcoin at $87,537. So we're basically just moving sideways here. Here's a post from chart analyst Crypto Wizard, and this is something to be aware of. This is a very real thing. He simply wrote, "Breakout is here." And what he's got here is the Russell 2000 on top. And then you've got the others chart on the bottom. The others chart, others is just the name of the chart that tracks the top 125 coins by market cap, excluding the top 10. So it's altcoins, but further out the risk curve, basically. And what he's noting is historically how altcoins have responded in an environment where the Russell 2000 is breaking out. The Russell 2000, those are small caps, the small cap stocks. And so, of course, here's the general concept. This is, if you really want to understand why money is flowing the way it is as it pertains to risk on appetite, it's this in a nutshell. This is the easiest way to understand it. As less and less money is available, people are less and less interested in engaging in risky behavior, financially speaking. As liquidity increases and funds, broadly speaking, are more available, what you will find is that people and businesses and institutions are willing to invest in more risky things. So if you have a little bit more money, this is how humans behave. You have a little bit more money, you start thinking, oh, okay, well, I've been investing in so-and-so in the stock market. Maybe we get into the small caps. That'd be Russell 2000 territory. And then those stocks can start to rally also. And then eventually what happens is they're like, wait a minute. Okay, well, I've still got these excess funds. Liquidity's high, right? These funds should be allocated somewhere. So then the appetite for risk just goes further out the risk curve, and then you'll find people, businesses, and institutions interested. Since there's more right at their fingertips, you got to allocate it somewhere. You'll find that there's an increased appetite at some point for investing in even more risky assets, including crypto. And crypto is considered far more risky, obviously. And then after that happens, and this is just broadly speaking, what you will find as liquidity continues to go up, not only are people, businesses, and institutions increasingly interested in investing in the riskiest asset class on the planet, which is crypto, they'll go out further on the risk curve just within the riskiest asset class. So instead of investing just in Bitcoin, for example, maybe you'll start to invest in other top coins, but then you go further out and you get in the mid caps, and then you get into the small caps. And so when you get into the small caps, those are the riskiest cryptocurrencies that are inside of the riskiest asset class. So what you do find is that as liquidity increases, it's only natural, it makes logical sense, it's very intuitive to understand this. Of course, as that liquidity increases, there's going to be an increased appetite to go further out the risk curve. So that's why the timing of all this, it does make sense. Now, we don't know exactly what the timing is going to look like in terms of is it today, tomorrow, next week, next month, when you start seeing things really rip to the upside. But in terms of the order, there's a reason that this is typically what you see. And look at this chart. This is going back to 2012. And so Crypto Wizard wrote, breakout is here. Every single time it breaks. Russell 2000 has broken out. Every single time this occurred, we saw a reversal in others, followed by an explosion. Can history repeat? Yeah, history rhymes with itself, I think is the best way to phrase it, but yes. And so you can see, every time this has happened, it's Russell 2000, and then there's a little bit of a lag time, and then you see alts just absolutely rip. I do not think that this time is going to be different. That does not make sense. You just have to understand why people behave the way that they're behaving. Intuitively, it just makes sense. We also had this post from Crypto Wizard. He said, replicating April, ? And so you got Bitcoin up top. So this would be April of this year. Of course, that's when all the tariff scare was happening. And so Bitcoin, oh man, how low did it get? About $75,000. I can't even remember, $72,000, somewhere around there. And then the bottom, it's also a Bitcoin chart, but it's up to where we are right now. And so he wrote, eventually every downtrend comes to an end. Back in April, Bitcoin exploded out of its downtrend following the formation of a double bottom. With a similar structure forming now, can it repeat? Well, that's an excellent question. It is kind of interesting because, well, you remember, you were here in April. You know, it was the end of the world in April because of the tariffs. Oh, crypto's falling apart. We're gonna go into a recession. Oh my God, we're gonna go into a depression. Some people said everything's falling apart. We can't sustain this. No, the tariff scare obviously passed. Ended up not being the end of the world. Here we are, and markets find bottoms, and we reverse to the upside. It was just a complete overreaction, broadly speaking, all that sell-off that was happening. So we'll see if this is a moment where we rip to the upside, but even if this isn't the exact moment, it's still coming. But there are a lot of chart analysts that are very optimistic. Based on historic precedent, probably about there. Here's a post from chart analyst Mustache. He says, Bitcoin, wow, it finally happened. Bitcoin has made a bullish cross, MACD, 3-day chart. And of course, the MACD is a momentum indicator in charts right here. And it's at the bottom, of course, and it says, the last 4 times this happened, we saw a rally of at least 66%. That would put Bitcoin at $140,000. So that'd be from the current price range. If history kind of rhymes with itself, that's about where it would put us. And that's getting into territory that many chart analysts that I follow think is perfectly reasonable. In fact, they think that Bitcoin could peak, a fair bit higher than that. Then there was also this. This is from chart analyst James Easton. He's an affiliate with Real Vision, so he's well informed when it comes to the macro thesis put forth by Julian Biddle and Rob Hall. And he wrote here, the last 2 times fear and greed on Ethereum dropped this low marks the exact bottom. Will history repeat? And that's kind of fascinating to see. Look at what we're talking about down here and see, just going back over roughly the last couple of years and where it bottomed out in 2022. I'll just tell you this, I've seen tons of analysts in recent weeks talk about positioning of Ethereum. And not that I'm not that excited about Ethereum, but yes, I've been holding it since 2017, but I've also been holding XRP and Bitcoin and a number of other coins since 2017. I'm more interested in Ethereum. This is the reason I'll talk about it a little bit on my channel. It's because if this thing starts ripping to the upside, I know historically what that means for altcoins. And that's the point where you start like rubbing your hands together like this, get that greed feeling inside you. You know that all the altcoins are going to start ripping to the upside if history is to rhyme with itself. That's why this matters to me. Here's a post from Altcoin Gordon here. He shared this with his 844,000 followers on X. He clearly believes something's going to happen. Just this morning, he wrote, "Descending channel on Ethereum. The reversal will be studied." So he thinks that, we are approaching that point where it's finally going to just rip to the upside and melt faces effectively. And then there was this headline from Cointelegraph: XRP may trade sideways in 2026 until bullish catalysts emerge. Analysts: "Oh no, we going to trade us some sideways here." Yeah, just quit your bitching. Quit your bitching. The asset class moves in tandem. It's going to be okay. They make it sound a lot more scary than this actually is. I got to tell you, I always find this comical. Anyway, so this piece reads as follows, and there are like some decent points made in part of this article. So it reads as follows: XRP's price could continue consolidating into the new year with a stronger upward trend dependent on more bullish catalysts, according to crypto analysts. Oh, you don't say the asset class moves in tandem? "We maintain a view that the latter half of 2026 will provide more constructive conditions for risk assets in general, but in the short term, we have a slightly bearish tilt on altcoins until Bitcoin consolidates or forms a bottom." And that's a direct quote from Nansen senior research analyst Jake Kinnis, and that's what he told Cointelegraph. Now, that's interesting to me because Raoul Pal specifically has cited that the when you would expect roughly for the cycle to peak based on macro conditions, it would actually be towards the later end of 2026. Those are his most recent calculations based on, because he went in and he got the numbers more precise over the last half year in particular. And so we're basically switching from a 4-year cycle to a 5.4-year cycle. And the things that drive that cyclicality have not changed. This time is not different, just to be clear. The number is different. That doesn't matter, though. The things that drive, whether it's 4 years or 5.4 years, those things are the same. Nothing has changed there, just to be clear. So anyway, when he says here, conditions will be better for risk on assets the second half of 2026, I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. It's like other people are figuring this out as well. They're looking at macro conditions and trying to figure out when people have an increased appetite for such. Well, just more confluence. It's like, and this is what I keep finding, especially over the last couple months as we've been approaching with each passing day, of course, closer and closer and closer to the end of 2025. I've seen people come kind of to peace with this concept, Anyway, piece continues. Kinnis is holding off on specific price predictions for 2026, but pointed to several catalysts that could drive XRP's price higher, including potential spot ETF approvals, integration with global payment rails, and increased efforts to make XRP a liquidity or bridge asset, end quote. Well, and of course they do know that there are spot XRP ETFs now, but there will be more. And that's what they're getting at. And increasingly, XRP, of course, will be used as a bridge asset. There's all sorts of great things going on within the XRP ecosystem. And then fundamentals do matter. It's not a fluke that XRP's been in the top 10 coins by market cap its entire existence, most certainly not. But we do need the right macro conditions to be present, or else all of those fantastic fundamentals aren't going to result in the price of XRP mooning, because it never has. XRP's been around for over 13 years. You need the right macro conditions. And when you have the right macro conditions, the fact that XRP is so functionally useful and genuinely does have high utility, that's what helps to propel it further, but you got to get to that point. And then they wrote here, echoing a similar sentiment, Jesus Perez, that's how you say that, Jesus Perez, CEO of Poisodonia 21 Capital Partners, told Cointelegraph that XRP may record sideways price action as we head into the new year. We see XRP holding around current levels in a constructive market scenario rather than initiating a strong new trend. XRP's upside will likely depend more on narrative persistence and market sentiment than on fundamental transformation. Well, again, the fundamentals themselves are strong, but that's kind of like a fancy way of saying, yeah, XRP is just going to go and the market goes, which is true. I know that people don't want that to be true. I don't mind it at all. I just want to believe whatever's true, and that is sufficiently, in line with reality. So totally cool with it. But all these great things with XRP do matter. Here you have, this is amazing to me, nothing but daily inflows for spot XRP ETF still. We're at $1.14 billion. Yesterday, it's reporting that there were $0 in inflows, despite, of course, the fact that markets were open. It's the day after Christmas. I'm assuming that has to do with the fact that since it's the day after after Christmas. There's probably some late reporting, so not all of the data's in. So I'm just going to check back tomorrow. I think there's about a 0% chance that we literally landed at zero. So I'm just going to check back on that, and I assume we're going to have another green day. I hope so. Eventually, we will have a day of outflows, but the fact that we've seen almost 30 straight business days worth of inflows for XRP is truly mind-numbing, especially in this environment. And that's just more evidence of the smart money, the whales, behaving differently than the typical limbing retail speculators. That's for damn sure. Here's a post from chart analyst Skipper. XRP hasn't looked great lately. It's stuck in a slump with little movement and low trading, but it's near its best potential recovery level since 2022. The big news, its bubble risk is at one of the lowest points in years. That means all the excessive speculation and risky betting has been cleaned out, so a big crash is less likely. This isn't a promise of an instant surge, but it's the perfect setup for a bottom to form. Buyers are waiting, sellers aren't pushing hard, and downward pressure is fading. XRP usually does well after long quiet periods, and with fewer people already invested, any good news, like better liquidity or more network use, could make prices jump. Okay, I don't buy the narrative stuff at the end there, but in terms of how it's positioned right now, there's a number of things you could talk about. Think about what happened after October 10th. Holy liquidity, man. People got absolutely destroyed. And it's I'm not gleeful about people losing money in that way. I'm not. I think it's silly to be playing with leverage, of course. But when you get the system to flush out and then you see, what looks like could be, getting close to, a bottom forming here, either it's already formed or we're close to it. I don't hate that. I certainly can't argue with that. But there are still some warnings, like I said at the outset of the video. For instance, here's a post from Chart Nerd. He's definitely an XRP bull. He's warning in the short term he could go lower, though. He said XRP's Gaussian channel indicator is hinting at a $1.60 to $1.50 price tag before any major breakout after both the upper and mid regression bands fail to hold as support. Price must close below $1.80 multiple times to validate this scenario. So he's not promising it's going to go that low, but he's one of many analysts I follow that have been warning about such price levels. Tons of other analysts have been as well. Incredible Crypto has. Casey Trades has been talking about. There's tons of analysts that have been talking about the possibility for notably lower price levels. But none of them think that it's the end of the road for XRP or that's it for the cycle. We're screwed. Come back in half a decade. No, that's not what I'm seeing from any of them. It's just normal volatility stuff, which, it's going to scare people because it is wildly volatile. No denying that. But you just got to get used to the fact that these wild swings almost never in and of themselves are indicative of long-term viability of the asset. It's normal volatility, and normal volatility in crypto land, it's extreme. It just is. You got to make peace with that. Here's a post from More Crypto Online. He said, XRP, no change. I am actively monitoring the current price action. If the ongoing weakness persists, the market could move directly toward $1.68 or potentially lower levels. And it's interesting, it looks like the lowest one he's got cited here is also $1.68. Wouldn't you know? At $1.68. I don't know, folks. I keep seeing roughly these levels all over the place. It doesn't mean it has to happen, but none of them are freaking out about if it happens, then we're in real trouble, guys. Blah, 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 blah. Peas and carrots. Nothing like that. Here's a post from chart analyst CW. Now, this one I definitely like. He says the price of XRP is falling, but spot taker CBD shows buying is dominant. Despite the price decline, whales are quietly accumulating XRP. And so I'll say this, even though XRP's price has been drifting lower with the rest of the crypto market, frankly, this chart shows that aggressive buyers are still more active than aggressive sellers. Now, that tells us selling pressure isn't coming from panic. It's not coming from forced selling. It's not even a leverage thing on the whole. What's happening, buyers are stepping in, but there's enough supply sitting on the order book to keep price from moving in sort of notable way higher, at least to this point. But when you see this kind of divergence, it usually means the market's it's in an absorption phase. Like, that's it. It's accumulation time, bro. So demand is there, but price won't move until that supply is cleared. So that's what you see, right before volatility. This is the normal behavior. It's whales accumulating. That's reasonable speculation from that data. Now, I know with about 100% certainty that whales are accumulating. There's stronger evidence than that. This is just one piece of evidence you can look at to come to that as reasonable speculation. It's unquestionably the case that whales are accumulating. But this is always what happens before the volatility returns. This is when people lose hope right now. There's, typical lemming retail speculators. They lose hope. They're all mopey about stuff. They just complaining on the internet, which is fine. That's what the internet was designed for. I have no qualms with that. I'm just noting what they do. And people stop paying attention, and then it rips. Speaking as someone that's been in crypto for over 8 years now, yes, more times than I could even know have that happened. It's just the emotions. Whew. But it's never the end. It's whatever terrible thing happens, it's never actually the end of the world. Everything actually is fine. Here's a post from chart analyst Steph is Crypto. He says, on XRP's monthly chart, losing the trend ribbon has historically marked the shift into full bearish momentum. In 2018 and 2022, the moment XRP lost the monthly trend ribbon, it wasn't just a pullback, it confirmed a broader bearish trend, followed by 65% and 54% downside moves. The trend ribbon works as a long-term momentum filter. So above the ribbon, bullish regime, trend supported, and below it, that would be the bearish regime, momentum flips negative. And at the moment, XRP is hovering right at the monthly trend ribbon. So, okay, I'll note that how many analysts have I shared in recent weeks who are tracking XRP and they're like, guys, this actually, just to be clear, it's a pretty critical moment. And then that's fair. Like, you can get to a critical moment and then things don't actually go to hell in a handbasket. It's actually a thing that happens all the time in crypto. Just FYI. But the closer it gets, the more nervous people get. And he says, at the moment, XRP is hovering right at the monthly trend ribbon. A confirmed loss would be a clear warning signal based on XRP's own historical behavior. Okay, well, I would hazard this guess. The only way you're going to see us go into a crazy multi-year bear market or something deep, like truly deeper than what's been discussed broadly on this channel, at least, is if crypto on the whole plummets because the asset class moves in tandem. So if the bears are really right and we're going into a prolonged bear market now, which I'm not convinced of, and if that means Bitcoin's going to crater even lower, it's going to get down to $40,000. Who knows what the number's going to be? If those bears are correct, yeah, you're going to see the XRP go with it. It's going to be temporarily catastrophic price-wise. And I'm going to do nothing. If that happens, I'm going to do absolutely nothing. I will just continue to hold because that's how I win. After I buy, I do nothing. It's an unsophisticated strategy that freaking works. Here's a post from eGreg Crypto. It says, XRP Gaussian Channel Playbook, simple view. When you zoom out, the chart is doing something we've seen before. Price is riding the upper side of the Gaussian channel, not breaking below it. That's constructive. Historically, this phase leads to expansion, not collapse. Two realistic outcomes. A bounce from the Gaussian top, momentum holds and price pushes higher without giving the perfect dip. Retest the yellow line, then bounce. This would be the second possibility. Says former resistance becomes support, healthy reset before continuation. My probability map, 45% bounce from Gaussian top, 40% retest yellow support, then up, 15% deeper consolidation if support fails. Trend bias remains up. Timing is the real battle, not direction. Patience greater than panic. Yeah, and I think that's a pretty fair message. Patience is always greater than panic. And there's always a possibility that it goes later or lower rather than what you might hope or expect for in the short term anyway. But either we're right or we're wrong about the long-term viability of XRP. And I just got to reiterate, whatever happens in the short term, that's not an indicator of such. Either we are right and it ultimately trends up as the years and decades pass, or we're wrong and it goes to zero. And whatever happens in the short term, even if negative price action, it's not swaying me because I'm looking at the strong fundamentals, and to me that just seems like a mismatch in value. If the price goes down, I'm just like, oh wow, the world's not getting it. Like you get it, I get it. The rest of the world going to learn the hard way, I guess, because sometimes assets do end up undervalued, and that's just That's not even a bad thing, depending on who you are. If you're people like us who are trying to, end up with larger positions, it's just opportunity, actually. So it depends on where you're at. But I'm optimistic for the future. I think that we're going to have, I had fun throughout 2025. Don't get me wrong. Like, it was great seeing XRP hit multiple new all-time highs. The fact that we're notably down from those highs at this point, I expect that. After all-time highs are hit, you find a new level of support. This is amazing that XRP's hanging out around this price level. This was a dream for people just a few years ago, and now it's happening. Like that's bad. So we're just going to keep hitting new plateaus as time passes. Like, that's my expectation. So I'm not worried about it. So yeah, I actually rather enjoyed 2025. Even though I would have hoped it would have been even more rip-roaring to the upside. But that's a thing you can't control. You just either have exposure when it happens or you don't. So I'm just going to keep holding. But I am optimistic that 2026 is likely to look a little bit better. But hey, just read between the lines, folks. It's coming. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.